right, now that we have this upper body nice and modeled, it's time to move on to the hand, which, you know, can be a very intimidating part of the process, but we're going to make it nice and simple. So what I've done is I've actually created a reference of just the hand, and I'll just show that to you real quick. So I looked at this model, this character. This reference here isn't very readable to see how we actually need the hand to be posed. So I created a new one in Procreate. That's pretty much exactly what I want this character's hand to look like. But I did it in such a way that I sort of planned out the way I want this geometry to sort of flow into each other. I drew a little bit through the hand. So this is right here, these lines are kind of the cube that are going to create the basic hand shape. And then these are going to be additional cubes that are going to be extruded from the end of the cube right here. And then this is the direction that I need the thumb to come out. It's from the front of the hand. And in the same way, we're just going to keep extruding out this way. So we're going to keep it as simple as possible and then add detail to it. Again, just kind of starting large with the big, simple shapes and creating more detail after we have those large shapes. So let's take this reference into Cinema. We're also going to create a new project for this. And the reason I want to do that is because one thing I've found in this industry and doing 3D modeling and character animation and character design and 3D character modeling in general is that one thing I've found in this industry with 3D character modeling is that it's very common to have an asset library of things like hands or feet or legs or arms that you can always bring back into new characters, especially if you've done it once and you really like what you did. So there's no reason to keep modeling hands over and over again. Maybe a couple of different styles of hands that you can use in the future, but for the most part, it's really pretty common and also a smart idea to have a library of these types of things. So that's what we're going to do. We're just going to create a new project, then we'll have the project saved, but then we're going to copy that hand into our other project once it's done. So let's do what we did before, where we bring in a new material for our reference. Actually, you know what? Let's do it just inside of the viewport. So we'll do that Shift V, bring in that image into the back plane. Not the right, though, just the front. There we go. And I'm going to line it up a little bit better. This doesn't really matter too much. I am going to increase the size, though. I think that's a good idea. Okay, right in the middle. And we'll turn up the transparency once again. Okay, and I don't think I need the side hand view, just at least for this character. Maybe if you're working on a more realistic character and you really want to get that hand just right, try this out. You know, get photos of your hand or of online. You can find some great hand models, but you can hold it up in place and take a photo of the way that you want to pose and do one from the side, maybe even do one from the top, just to get those 3 different references that you can work from for a more realistic model. But we're just working on a simple MoGraph character, so it should be a pretty simple process to create this hand. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and start with a cube, do what we did before. Just going to try to block this in really quickly. Okay, it can be thinner. Not this way. Thinner this way. No. There we go. Okay. And go ahead and make that editable. We'll bring that bottom face in just a little bit in the x-axis and up. So that's kind of meeting that bottom edge of where the hand's going to round out. We're going to round out the top as well here in just a second. Let's just make it wide for now. Okay. And actually, I think I do want this edge out just a little bit further than its counterpart. Okay. So at this point, what I am planning on doing is I'm going to make some cuts in this cube right down the middle. We'll do it from this view. Just get our modeling tool out for the loop selection, or the loop cut, ML. We'll make cuts right where those fingers are. All right. And I'm going to also make one cut here, which is where my thumb is going to extrude out in this direction. Okay. But for now, let's just grab these edges and let's start to shape it using this side view here, the way that this hand kind of arcs, and where the the knuckles are going to do this arc just like this. I'm trying to do that here in this view. There are so many different ways to model a hand that I've found that it's going to be important that you find one that is helpful for you and that makes sense to you. The more anatomically correct that you want it to be, obviously the more complicated this process can become. But I'm going to do our extrude tool again with all 4 of these faces selected. I'm going to press M and then T. And I want to show you some of these options now. We have preserve groups checked, which if I do this, will actually extrude all of them together and keep those points welded to each other. But I actually want to turn that off so that each of these faces will then extrude individually. Okay, so this is fine for now, because what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to grab each of these faces and use this front view here to kind of just taper and shape it where I want it. Okay, there's that first one. I'm doing a little bit of rotation here as well. Kind of want to do that with this one, just to make sure it's nice and rotated the way it needs to be. All right, let's grab this one. This is our middle finger, so it should be the tallest. Not by much, but enough to know that this is our middle finger. And let's grab our index finger. I'm going to bring it in, rotate it so that it's facing up. So this hand sketch reference will be available to you so you can follow along with this. It'll just make it a lot simpler if you want to continue and just do the exact same thing that I'm doing here. If you're not fully comfortable with drawing your own hands, we have this sketch available for you to use as well. So you can just follow along with me if you'd like. All right. But I definitely encourage you, if you love drawing hands and maybe hands have been your forte, good on you. It's pretty uncommon, but I would be, it'd be amazing for you to finally learn how to do that in 3D, right? So, all right, so now we've got these fingers kind of blocked out. That's perfect. This is what we want. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to extrude out this thumb a little bit. So let's try it by doing this. Grabbed both of those, and I actually have preserve groups unselected, so I need to select that once more so that they go together. I'm going to kind of reduce the size of this extrusion down. Now we've got this right here is what I want to work with for my thumb. So I'm going to extrude this out this direction. Now I'm going to work with these vertices just a little bit to make more of a square shape like what we did for the fingers. But we do want to kind of turn this just a bit. So the hand is actually supposed to go out, or the thumb is actually supposed to go forward and out in this direction a little bit. So we have, you can see kind of the semblance of that top face here. This one right here. That's what we'll use to extrude upward. And just like that, we have kind of a, we have a hand shape. What happens when we put this inside of a subdivision surface? Well, it's super pointy, and that's because we don't have a whole lot of information to allow this subdivision surface to actually create these nice rounded tips. So that's what we're going to do next. We're going to start to add more detail to this hand. And this is just, obviously really rough, but you can see how quickly you can block in a basic hand shape to get started with some more detailed modeling. Okay, so I want to make sure also that my display has the lines showing so I can see where these cuts are happening. For this tip of the thumb, I want to make sure it's a lot more square than it is. So let's get back into our cube. Okay. And actually, I think what I'll do is I'll just select all of these, shrink them down so that they literally are a square, or that they are actually at the same depth together. Okay, and then let's just start to shape this a little bit more closely to what we want for this kind of cartoon hand. Just bringing these lines just a little bit further back so that we're not having this huge palm sticking out. Right. Let's go back to point mode and grab this one. Just make sure our edge flow is looking a little cleaner than this. From here up to through here. Okay. And once we start adding more rounding to these shapes, it's going to look a lot nicer. Okay. All right. Okay. So we have a nice blocked in hand. It's very pointy. So let's go in and start to add some more detail to these fingertips. So the first thing you probably, if you aren't aware of how subdivision surfaces work, this is where we'll kind of cover the way that subdivision surfaces read this basic geometry. So basically, if I make a loop right at the tip of each of these, what's going to happen is the subdivision surface will now have more information to round out those tips. You see that? So obviously this is not very detailed, and so all it did was it just kind of like made it look like a rounded rectangle at the tip. And what I actually wanted to do is make it a little bit more, even more rounded. So you can take each of these and making sure on our scale tool that we have the object axis saying per object manipulation so that it scales each of these. Oh, it's not doing what I thought. Each of these should scale individually. Okay, so what we'll do is now we can just scale each of these in just a little bit to round out the tip. I'm going to add another loop here as well. So now when we do that subdivision surface, it is rounder, but it also kind of goes to more of a tapered point. This is actually looking pretty good for what we would want for our character. So if you look again at our original character sketch, looks like this one actually goes even out a little bit further. So I'm going to turn off the subdivision surface now. And I will grab both of these edge loops by pressing the U and then L for loop selection. And I'm going to just model these out just a little bit more. And let's scale them down. All right, so now it's time to start adding more shape to these fingers, because right now they're just super straight lines, and we're going to need more edge loops anyway to start bending these fingers when we actually want to rig and animate them. So for now, let's start with a thumb. I'm going to add an edge loop. We'll just start with two edge loops on each of these. Hold on, actually, the thumb only has, it's going to bend here, 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 and here. So I do want to make sure that this edge loop is a little straighter. So I'm going to rotate this axis a little bit so that it's kind of facing the direction of where I want this to be. And then I'm going to turn off axis mode to scale this down, just like that. All right. So I might end up moving this around anyway. But at least now we have that. This edge loop to work with. Okay, so now let's move this in to follow the flow of the lines. Okay. Yeah, so we may end up just having this follow that direction a little bit more. Yeah, so our thumb is probably going to bend from here, the middle of where the wrist is, right here, and then right here, and also right here. So they're kind of long. These finger joints are going to be kind of longer than human joints, but that's what our character calls for, and that's what we're going to do. Let's add some for these fingers as well. Looks like these don't go out far enough, quite far enough either, so I'm going to extend these. Let's make sure we have our loop selection on. All right, so this is looking a lot more like our character. Let's make a few more loops. I want to add one right here for where.
Can you do this part in the front view where you have the model?
Right here? Yeah, good idea.
Can you full screen that, or do you need?
Yep.
That helps, yeah, a lot to follow along.
Okay. So now we're going to start to add some more of this geometry to indicate where our knuckles are going to be. First knuckle here is going to be at the bottom. We'll just add one loop for now, but we are going to add probably 3 loops total per knuckle so that when the finger bends, there's enough geometry to work with that it will create a nice even loop there. Actually, let's go ahead and add this second loop here for that part. And yeah, so this is good. Now we can start to shape this. And I think I'm going to use my brush tool for this part. Just hit M and then C for brush. And I'm going to turn this strength down quite a bit, but we'll keep our radius kind of high here. Unselect everything and make sure we're on faces or points. All right, so now we have some geometry to work with and our basic hand shape that we're going to attach to our model. But first, let's go ahead and add in those edge loops that we're going to need for the knuckles. And this you can do really in any view. And then we'll go over the slide edge loop tool.
Yeah, this will be way less daunting for someone new.
That's great. those there, but I kind of want one right here. A little bit further up on the knuckle. All right, we're going to add one here and one here for good measure. And let's do 2 edge loops here. Okay, and then here's a tool that you can use, and it's called Slide Edge Loop. And I want to say it's under Mesh, Create Tools. Hold on a second, let me find it. Slide, okay, so if I do a loop, let me try a loop selection here. If I do slide, it's M-O, okay, so M and then O is called slide. And what it's doing is it's actually moving along the edges that are already established. So it's not, you don't have to drag it up and then readjust all of those vertices to match. It's actually sliding it in the direction of that. So if you just want to even these out a little bit, you can do a loop selection by doing UL, then doing M and then O to slide it along that model. Kind of a handy tool. And I did intend that pun. So